Hello, everyone. My name is Kevin Nevels, and I am proud to serve as the chairman of the board of the Coppell Chamber of Commerce. One of the honors that I get in this position is I get the privilege to be able to interview our candidates for city council. And I am joined by Davin Bernstein. Davin, welcome to the interview. Happy to have you here.
Hello, thank you for having me.
And Davin is running for place 3 on the city council. So Davin, I want to go ahead and just jump right into our questions. The first question is, tell us, why are you running for city council, and why should the voters choose you over your opponent?
Sure. So I decided to run, quite frankly, there was a specific moment, but there are a couple of reasons why. Last year, the city council voted to raise the city's tax rate. And obviously, there's an increase in taxes, but they voted to increase the tax rate. And this was after several citizens had spoken and said that they didn't want it to happen. And in fact, the city manager had advised the council that everything was covered in the budget for last year. But there was an effort to say, well, in the long run, it's better to have this extra, it was about $3 million. And that when the city manager had just said that the budget was taken care of for the current year, really struck me as there was some groupthink going on. There's some views on the city council that are not necessarily reflected among people within the community, and that's the real reason that I'm running. Is I've seen many times where citizens have issues and they appear before council, and then I hear things that are at odds with what really the bulk of the sense of the community is, who have actually taken the time to show up and appear at the city council at a hearing, for example. And so my tagline, I guess, is leadership that listens, and that's really important to me, right? So the fundamental question is, does the city council represent the citizens to advise the city council on how to run the government of the city, or do they represent the city to explain decisions to the citizens? And the first is what I feel to my core, is that we need to have a better dialogue with the citizens, and quite frankly, that will create a stronger community, a community that is more vibrant, more engaged, and has a stake in what's going on. As opposed to, here's the final budget all wrapped up with a bow on it, or here's a spending plan, here's a building that we want to build that the design is already in place, all the major decisions have been made, and it's just put in front of people to say yes or no. And so people need to be involved much sooner in the process, and that's what I wanted to have happen. And that's, in short, why I decided to run. Actually, let me add one more thing. There is a customer satisfaction survey that the most recent one indicates that the overall quality of life in Coppell, as viewed by the citizens of Coppell, has fallen. And not only has it fallen, but it's fallen below 50%. Fairly significant drop. And that has happened over the tenure of my opponent. And that tells me that there's a problem, and that my goal in going on to city council is to start asking those questions about how we can improve the quality of life for our citizens.
Excellent. So next question we're just going to jump into is, what do you think are the 2 or 3 most important actions that you would take if elected, and how would you advance them and fund those actions?
Sure. So this has been a difficult year. Anybody would say that, right? Not only do we have a pandemic that has impacted local businesses as well as city operations, but we had some decisions that were made at the state level that will impact the funding that the city gets. And so this is a challenging time, right? But what I'm asking citizens to do is to take a look at what do we do at this point in time, and this is a time to start to be creative and start to go back to the basics. So what are the basics? The basics are that the city has a responsibility to provide public safety, to provide roads, to provide the library, to provide parks and trails. Those are the essentials, right, that the city has to provide. And we should do that in the best way that we can. And I have no qualms at all with how the city does that. They do a fantastic job at all of these things, right? The question becomes, when we start to have discretionary spending, what's the process by which citizens are involved in that? How do we evaluate whether this project or that project has the support of a broad range of the citizenry, right? Not 100 people, but a broad range of the citizenry, particularly if it's for a major spending plan. And so these are the sorts of things that we might ask somebody at the very beginning. I was involved in the Coppell 2040 think tank, right? And we ask questions about what is it that we'd like to see, and it's very amorphous. It's very creative. What are ways that we can be a great city? And we got some great ideas from that. But from that, we should not develop plans and then put them, like I talked about earlier, right in front of the city council develops them and then put them up in a yes or no decision, right? We need to involve citizens in what's going on. That means having a website that's very dynamic, that says, here are the projects that are under development. If you have comments, click here. And we can start to see comments from citizens real time before every meeting that something is discussed. We can see how citizens are weighing in. How do they feel about a situation? That's a great way for the city to engage its citizens and make sure that projects that we're working on have the broader support that really should be necessary before we go on an aggressive spending plan. So really, my focus is not to create something new. I don't have a desire to get my name on any building. What I want to do is make sure that the core services are delivered well, as we have continued to do, but also, right, that the discretionary spending is well spent and is spent the way citizens want it to happen. And there are lots of ways that we can engage, we can solicit input from the citizens, and that's really, my goal is to represent citizens to any major decision that's being made.
Excellent. Well, let's talk a little bit about development of the city. And we talked a lot about development, and then, we're getting to a point where we need to discuss redevelopment. And where do you think that those emphasis need to be in Coppell? Do you think that that's going to be a residential or a commercial push? And how do you think that Coppell has performed in this area in the past?
So, yeah, I think that redevelopment is something that we should be planning for. When the city developed a strategy decades ago of promoting warehouse buildings on the west side of town to leverage our proximity to DFW, right? That was a great strategy. But now, right, land was worth a different amount, right? We are smack dab in the middle of the Metroplex. Fantastic geographic location, and we can leverage commercial development for our citizens, and to bring the broader community not into our residential areas, which is the core of the city, but bring it into the areas around us. We need to have a plan. We need to have a plan. Sandy Lake will no longer look like a warehouse district between Coppell Road and 121, right? That's something that is dynamic and needs to happen. So it's really on the commercial side. On the residential side, we have some properties, again, not in the core residential area. That's built out, and I have only heard citizens say that they love that. They do not want that touched. They want to, we want to be able to improve houses. As I've been block walking in the city, I've seen people that have done some beautiful things, taking some old houses that are probably 30 or 40 years old, and they look beautiful. I mean, they're really have been rehabbed by the citizenry on their own. I think we need to just protect the beauty and the greenery that is the major residential area, and then explore ways to develop parcels of land, for example, at MacArthur and Beltline, and on the west side of town, and areas that make it more convenient for Coppell residents to go shopping closer to home and support Coppell businesses. And more opportunities to bring the types of businesses locally, for example, along Sandy Lake Road in town, that are really what the citizens want. I think that we have an opportunity within Old Town to maybe recast it. There's been a lot of difficulty in having the businesses that are there to stay and to thrive. And I think we need to take a look at that. But I think that this is not about a major spending plan. This is about having urban development in a way that that will make Coppell, the city that people want to be in, not only to live, but also to shop. But when they do that, it doesn't impact the residents who live here. So that's the sort of development that I think that the City Council should be working on.
Excellent. Now, earlier, you talked about the core services that Coppell delivers, right? Do you think that Coppell delivers those services in the most effective manner? And, we would like you to speak on specifics about improvements that you would like to advocate for.
Sure. So I do, quite frankly, I do know that the city does deliver the services very well, right? We have a very high ranking with the insurance industry. We're able to respond to fire and health emergencies within seconds, and we're developing another fire station in order to do that. I think that's excellent. I think we need to do that in order to maintain that quality of life. Our nation is going through a difficult time talking about race relations and talking about the police force and how do we reposition that going forward. I have a lot of faith and confidence in our police chief to navigate those turbulent waters, absolutely turbulent, right, in a way that will continue to protect the citizens of the city. He made a comment in the last budget meeting that he was able to reduce the police budget without affecting services at all. He was very specific, very clear about that, and I applaud that. Right, what that indicates is that there had probably been a lot of extra spending, and the police chief took a look at the situation and said, look, this is what we need in order to deliver services. That's the sort of thinking that I think we as a city need to look at for all of our core services, right? We're starting to see trails that are being built, for example, along MacArthur, in order to allow bike riders to transit the city and get to broader community bike paths. That's also a great thing. This is part of a master plan that was developed over 10 years ago, and I'm heartened to see that it's happening this year. But my view is that the city needs to be championing those things that the citizens want. When we do another citizen survey, we should be asking, what are the 2 or 3 amenities or services that you would like the city to focus on, and then we start this process, as I talked about, right, of how to deliver them and engaging the citizens all along the way of development, so that when we have a plan in place, that the citizens are like, yes, I'm so glad this is happening, we've been working on it, and we see the work that has gone into it all along the way. We've been able to comment, right? So that's the kind of city that I want to have, and those core services are, we just need to continue to offer them. One thing I would say that is a cautionary note to me is that the city did some benchmarking for water and sewer rates, and they came to the conclusion that our rates were lower relative to other cities in the area. And while I think that's a valid way to look at what the pricing is and what the pricing structure should be, I also feel that the city said, well, we're fully covered in providing the services today, right? How do we, if we're going to increase rates here, where's the offset so that citizens understand that this isn't a tax rate by another means? And so I think we have to be really careful about that. And citizens need to know that we're not taking every opportunity to raise rates here and not there. So another example of that, what are things that I would do on council? The homestead exemption rate in Coppell has been 5%. It's been 5% for, I believe, 15 years since I arrived in Coppell. Every city around us has 20%. There are other cities, cities in very different economic circumstances that have some different rates, but every city you can think of in Northwest Dallas County, Addison, Carrollton, Farmers Branch, even Grapevine, City of Dallas, all have 20%, right? What that means is that the citizens have been paying a 15%, right, additional costs, right, for their assessed value of their property for a long period of time. And the critical issue is that even though this is a difficult time, there's been no plan in order to develop, right, how do we increase the homestead exemption. So we would certainly not do it immediately and all of a sudden. We need to have a plan, and that's the sort of thing that city council members should be advocating for, listening to citizens to make sure that all of the essentials are covered. And if we're going to go at a slower pace, then it's because there's a project that we want to focus on, and so we're investing in the future at the request of the citizens.
So Davin, last official question I have for you is, I'd love to know what you think about the transparency of the decision making in Coppell.
Right. So transparency is good. And the city is compliant with the state requirements for making documents available. Typically, I have friends that do document requests periodically. They take the full 5 days. It's not a big deal because they do make the information available. I think the real challenge that the citizens need to understand about transparency is, are you able to go to the website and find out the information that you want, right? What's the status of a particular building? How much did it cost to build? How much does it cost to maintain it each year, right? So, pieces of information that citizens are interested in learning about their government, right? That should be readily accessible. The feedback loop, right? If you want to provide feedback to the city, right? Or you want to talk about a particular project, right? How does that get fed back, and how do you know the best way to do it, right? Email is something that we've had for 30, 40 years. Certainly that's available, but there's a lot more innovative means. I've been a member of Allies in Community, and we're talking about how we can better communicate as a small subset of a city activity. And we were talking about, gosh, at least a half a dozen, probably close to a dozen different technologies that are not in use today, where people can say, hey, look, here's a comment, and I want to add a little bit more on it. People can go into threads. I mean, certainly Facebook, but a lot of other technologies like Slack and Twitter and so forth. And so, I think we do have to increase the ability to hear from citizens on specific areas, and the ability for them to be able to identify the sorts of things that they're interested in, and make it easier for them to find online.
Absolutely. Well, last question I have for you is, we want to get to know a little bit about more about you and how you're involved in the community. So, so tell us, what sort of volunteer activities are you involved with, or is your ambition only political to be on the council? I say that in jest.
No, my ambition is not only political. As a matter of fact, that's not really where I want to be spending time. It's where I think that the time is needed in the city, in talking to citizens. I met my wife through my church, St. Anne's, here in Coppell. And that's always been a huge driver for me. The community there is awesome, and the broader community is something that, when I moved away and then moved back to Coppell, I didn't want to live anywhere else. I wanted to live in the city of Coppell, to be close to a community that I had gotten to know quite well. My volunteer activities have been, on a range of city activities, child activities, and community interest activities. So specifically, and probably most importantly for the city, I've been involved in monitoring city council meetings, monitoring work session meetings, right? Because a lot of discussions and conversations happen in the back room before city council comes out onto the dais. So I've participated in them, and I understand that process of how the city operates. I've also was appointed to the Economic Development Committee for the city, served on that for a term. I've been a part of the Coppell 2040 think tank and some other activities associated with that, and just lots of different community activities, Allies in Coppell, that were kind of city sponsored, to get to know the city as well. I did Leadership Coppell a long time ago, and it really helped me understand a lot of the different aspects of the city. Church activities, I have a daughter who's currently in middle school, and so I'm still involved in the youth ministry there. I do not expect to give that up. It's a very important passion of mine, our youth, and helping them understand their faith better. And I do other activities. I'm a Knight of Columbus at church as well, so I do some volunteer activities with them. But then also, right, for example, MetroCrest Services is an important component of the community. It is providing support for a lot of people in the community who might have lost jobs and might not have any other means of food and other sources of goods that they need. I've volunteered there. I've done a food drive donation with an interfaith group that I'm in order to deliver and keep that pantry stocked. Critical component of the infrastructure, right, that helps make our city vibrant and good. I've been involved in, we had a prayer rally, right, when the issue with Black citizens being shot, right, started to come up on the horizon. I participated in that. So lots of things within the city, within my church. And let me just see if I think those are the things that, yeah, I mean, I've also been a adjunct professor at the business school at University of Dallas. I have an MBA. I'd be the only person, I believe, on council with an MBA if I was elected. And then not so much in the community today, but I am a Navy veteran. I served 7 years in the Navy, ship driver, and would not have traded that for anything. I think it's a great model for giving back to our country.
Well, Davin, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate the opportunity to get an insight into you and your thoughts about the campaign and the city. So again, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, I really appreciate the opportunity to share my thoughts with you, and hopefully the broader community will have a chance to see this. I am block walking, so you may see me around. Please say hi. And my signs say you can always email me, davin@davinbernstein.com. So I would love to hear from any citizen that has any question about how I would handle this or handle that if elected.
Excellent. Well, again, thank you so much for joining us. And guys, thank y'all so much for tuning into this video. Have a great day.
Great. Thank you.